Hannah is a recent graduate of Northeastern, so I luckily had the opportunity to get to know her briefly while she was at school, and she is also one of our Innovator Award winners, which is a really incredible honor. And with the Innovator Awards, our goal is to recognize the boldest, most creative change makers in Northeastern's vast entrepreneurial ecosystem, which Hannah definitely is. And then we also have, I believe, is it Rashab? I'm sorry that we didn't get a chance to connect earlier. I'm so happy that you're joining us online.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So Rashab is the founder and CTO of Join, which is a communication platform supercharged by AI. And at Join, he leads the development of cutting-edge AI technologies that redefine communication. By integrating machine learning and natural language processing, Join enables effortless and intelligent connections. He's got a master's degree in computer science from BU and a background in chemistry and computer science. And Rashab, I actually know your former co-founder of Mount because she was a Northeastern student. So I am thrilled to be connecting with you as well today. So thank you all for joining. So happy to be here. And I am going to kick this off by asking a question. So something that I hear a lot from student founders in my day-to-day at Northeastern University is that they are really afraid to fail. And when I hear that, I definitely empathize with that. And also, of course, you're going to end up having a different version of what you're building than when you initially started. So I wanted to ask, have you ever failed before? What did you learn from it? And how did you keep pushing forward with courage? Who wants to get us started?
I can actually get us started on that. I mean, it would be a lie to say that you don't fail when you found a startup, especially as a startup founder. Like being in school and trying to like balance your classes and doing like everything at once. I would say that I like fail every single day. But the best thing to do and to kind of like balance that is to, one, take care of yourself. I think it's really important to prioritize your health while you're like balancing a lot of things that's going on in your life. And then two, seek mentorship. It's really important to find people who are there to help you. Like, for example, at Northeastern, I had Ashley to kind of like help me out there. And there's like a huge ecosystem that is dedicated to help founders. So try to seek help and try to be vulnerable and being okay with, I guess, like expressing your failure with other founders because you're not alone. So I would say try to learn how to feel comfortable with it and just keep on moving forward and knowing that you're not alone.
Thanks. Anyone over here want to add to that or online?
Yeah, I would just say, a kindergarten teacher once told me mistakes is where the best learning happens. And I do think that's true. I built a startup and with two amazing women, and we built the platform out after doing what we thought was ample customer discovery. And it soon became evident that we built way too much, way too soon. And didn't test enough along the way. And so that was a valuable lesson. And that helps me every day in my job when I speak to students who come to me with a solution to a problem. And I always say, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And really, when you make those mistakes, it's a really great opportunity to pivot or turn your venture in a new direction. It's very rare when I meet founders for the first time when they embark on their journey that what they thought they were going to build is where they end up landing. Often there are lots of zigs and zags. It's never usually a straight trajectory. And so being aware that that's going to happen is a really good sort of mindset to go in with, and knowing that you may fall, you may fail, you may pivot, you may like end up ending it and building something else, but just being sort of open to that process.
Yeah, I definitely second that, and like to think of things that happen not as failures, but as a learning opportunity, because just because you did something and it wasn't successful, you know that that wasn't successful, and that's now time that you can take towards something else and really dedicate your time to that. So I try to keep that in mind. And also, like you were saying, just have time to speak with people that are, in my case, in the community or users of a product, and just really be able to learn from that experience.
Awesome. Thank you. Rishab, do you have anything to add to that?
I think everyone covered it perfectly well. I was just going to add that failures when building startups are always learning opportunities. Every one of us, if any one of us said that they've never failed, then I'd be very surprised. Mostly because as you start up, just like, I think the biggest part to take away from here is customer discovery, and that's a journey that never ends. So the biggest trap that I've fallen into and I've seen people fall into is, you build a lot and then you get to a point where you're unsure of what your vision was, and neither are your customers. And that's the point where you need to look back and say, okay, let's rewind the tape. Let's get back to where we were and let's pivot, or let's see what the customer really wants.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So lots of great takeaways from the group as a whole. I heard the importance of having a team and prioritizing self-care and your mental health. I heard a lot about the importance of pivoting and knowing when it's time to pivot, knowing that it's okay to pivot. It's a great opportunity for customer discovery. Yeah, thank you. That was fantastic. So this is a question for the student founders. I want to hear a little bit more about how you began building a startup as a student and what really propelled you to take action, as well as what your first steps actually looked like. I think for so many people, the first step can be really, really daunting. And so I would love to have you kind of break it down, make it a little more accessible, and share with folks how you got started. Isabella, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I can start. I think for me, building Girls Who VC, I was in a unique position where I really started building the community before I had a product or anything that I was offering people. So when I first had the idea inspired by Girls Who Code, made a website, made a logo, posted it on my LinkedIn with just an interest form, and that was really all I had. And now looking back, that was really my first customer discovery. But at that point, I think it was just me being like, I don't know if this is something anyone would be interested in. And so I started that, and then people started reaching out to me saying they were interested. And that was really when I started to build things and had maybe like 100 calls over a couple weeks, started meeting with people, seeing what they would be interested in for me to build. And then really just started doing that, writing blog posts, writing newsletters, starting a podcast. I think everything that I was doing, I really just dove headfirst into it. And that came from a mentor of mine who told me that one day I was going to have an idea, and my biggest mistake was going to be spending so long planning it out that I was actually never going to launch. And when I got to that moment and came up with Girls Who VC, I thought of that back to that moment and said, I'm going to be spending so long planning this out that I'm actually never going to be able to make an impact. And so that was when I decided to really just dive headfirst. And I've kind of taken that with everything I've done and just kind of put something out, put it out to the community, see what their thoughts are, and then go back a little bit, make it better, tweak it, and do a second iteration.
I would say it's just to get it started. I think it might sound really straightforward, but I remember when I first started it, it actually was born out of a class project. I submitted it like literally 30 minutes before it was due, named it on the spot, didn't really think too much of it. It was just like one of those like really cool ideas that I jot down when I travel. And I got a few feedback from like other students, and I just learned that this is like an actual problem, and it's not just me who's going through it, it's also other people, and there's people who are willing to clean their basement and make space and make money off of it. So I just kind of get myself to integrate it into our ecosystem at Northeastern and really be in an empowering community that's not going to be very discouraging, because I feel like when you get things started initially, when you're like so young and like very new into the world, you don't know anything, you kind of like really need to curate your environment, and you need to surround yourself with those who actually want to to do big things and actually are on the same boat as you. So I would say try your best to surround yourself with like people-minded. So because that's like the only thing to get started, right? It's like if you want to find a startup, you can't just go around and tell people about like your ideas and because some of them might not even believe in your vision, and that's okay. Which is why you need to be really careful with the people that you surround yourself with.
Excellent. And Tara, I just want to give you an opportunity to answer from the perspective of how do you get started and kind of what resources do students have? And then Rashad would, of course, love to hear from you about your experience. And then we have a question as well. So Tara, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're lucky to live in a resource-rich town in Boston, Boston, New York, San Francisco. There's tons of accelerators. There's always a meetup or a community event that you can take part in. With your idea, I think like immerse yourself again in the problem. Like, who are you serving? What are you doing? What are you thinking of doing? Really evaluate the landscape. Who are your competitors? Who are the periphery players? What are some of the challenges? What is the regulatory environment like? Get familiar with everything so you can be an expert on it, and then start socializing it. And, you know, I'm kind of the one who I feel it's good to actually have people say that's a dumb idea. I'm like, why is it a dumb idea? Tell me why. Because, you know, they have a perspective that is valuable in terms of challenging what you're doing and helping you sort of find or navigate through their challenges. So, you know, be open, become an expert on that topic, figure out like the market opportunity. I think there was a sign out there said build something for 100, I can't remember what the exact quote is, but it speaks to market sizing. And so, you know, try to evaluate all of those pieces and dive in head first and figure out if this is something tangible there that you want to be part of, because you are going to have to live it, breathe it, love it for a long period of time. So it's good to see if you have the sort of commitment and dedication to see it through.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I think we kind of keep circling back to customer discovery and the importance of really making sure this is the right fit for you and that it's actually needed. And I think that the reality is building a business, especially one that spans many years, can be extremely challenging, as you guys know. And when you have the data and the need to back it up, it makes things a little bit easier. Rashad, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, actually, I think well, I've been part of a couple startups. My first one was actually born out of a hackathon, and funny enough, so was the second one. Not exactly born, but that's kind of how I got started. I guess an engineer's perspective, or my perspective, I think the best way that I found to find like-minded people to sort of go, who are interested in the same thing and want to go on the same journey as you, was to go to a hackathon. It was the perfect place to find people. Okay, how many people can I find who believe in the exact same thing that I want to build, or believe that there is a problem that exists, and how can we solve this? I think that was the best way I found to find co-founders or to find people who are just interested in the same idea. And moving on from there, just building, I think this goes back to the first question that you had asked as well, fail fast. Definitely build, see what sticks. If it doesn't, well, too bad. Try again, keep moving. Hear from your customers, hear from people who are passionate about the problem, hear from people who have the problem, and keep it moving from there. That was that's what I can add.
That's fantastic. Definitely second all of that. And I think we have a question back there. Hi.
Yes. Hi, my name is Moses. I go to Suffolk, and I have like an idea, basically a business idea for a certain like niche in like my community. It's in Suffolk as well. My main concern is basically that one of you guys were talking about it earlier, how you'll like throw it out there, revise, throw it out, revise, but like mine, I'm working on an app per se, and I feel like if I throw out my app, I'm kind of fearful, I guess, of other people seeing it and also just working on it on happenstance to like, I guess, more competitors out of nowhere. That's like the main fear I have. How did you guys work around that?
I can answer that question. I actually had the same fear when I initially wanted to go on the pitch stage for Boxy, and I can tell you that founding a startup is so hard. Like no one's gonna like go out there and just out of the blue like steal your ideas and make the same one the next day. I promise you, when you're like so into it, you know how hard it is, and you might want to quit sometimes, even yourself too. So I would say don't even worry about that. Don't worry about like people stealing your ideas. It's not gonna happen.
And
Yeah.
to add to that, sorry, am I interrupting somebody?
Go for it, Rashad. You got it first, and then Tara.
Okay, I think to add to that, I will say yes. Well, there is the off chance that somebody just takes your idea and runs with it, but the fact is, they're hearing about it from you. You've done enough research. You've done the market studying. You've understood the problem, and you're at a point where you're presenting it to other people. I find it very hard to believe that somebody who's picking it up from there is going to be able to move faster than you. In fact, if you see somebody like that, you should approach them and say, hey, do you want to join me? Because here's all the knowledge I have, which is going to take you 6 months to learn.
Yeah, Tara.
Yeah, I just also say that I meet with students every day who tell me that they're building something that nobody's ever done before. And usually with a 1-minute Google search, I can find 5 people that are playing in that space. So, and you may be able to do it better or in a different way than somebody else. So that doesn't mean that you necessarily shouldn't do it, but it's just a matter of being like aware of like the landscape that you're working in, 1. And then 2, I think it's great to socialize it. Part of your role as a founder is going to be to sell what you're building. And so from day 1, you have to believe it, own it, sell it, and socialize it with as many people as possible. And to Rashid's point, you might find a future co-founder or founding team member by doing that, or somebody who wants to partner with you, who has a valuable connection, who can make an introduction to a mentor or an advisor or an investor. So never hold things too close to you. People who I've seen do that end up with nothing because they keep it to themselves and they don't get it out there soon enough or fast enough. And somebody ends up doing it, or they end up losing interest in it because they can't sort of create a momentum around their idea or their venture.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit more about fundraising. I think that that's always an interesting topic, especially as a student. So I'm curious to hear from the student founders, if you've fundraised at all, what's worked for you, what's been difficult, what that experience has really been like. And then Tara, from you, I would love to really hear about your perspective on what is the best path for a student founder. So perhaps we can hear from Hannah, your experience first, and then Isabella, Rashab, and then Tara.
I would say based on my experience, I took more of like the bootstrapped and like grant searching route. So over the last year, I think I participated in maybe around like 15 different pitch competitions. So I got the opportunity to go to different places to just like gather as much like prize money as I could instead of like giving up equity. And the other thing that I have been doing in the summer is to build rapport with angel investors. I feel like as student founders, there's like this pressure in, like seeking a pre-seed or raising capital when we don't even know what that means. And when like sometimes we're not even ready to do that. And I think like the best bet is to really try to see if your idea and you as a founder, or in the right space to even like win free money. And then from there, you can start your way up like from raising your round through angel investors and then potentially through VCs. So that's the route that I'm personally taking, but I'm sure there's like a lot of different routes that other founders have taken. But that's how I personally do it. I just go after a lot of free money as much as I can, apply to grants as much as I can, and then do angel investors.
Nice, thank you. Rishabh, do you want to add or speak to your fundraising experience?
Sure. So my first startup, we did something very interesting. Well, arguably interesting, arguably not, because that was dead in the water a year and a half in. But the idea that we had was an accessibility device for visually impaired. So the goal was to build something that helps you, quote unquote, see what's around you. If any of you have heard of Microsoft Garage, funny enough, they were working on something exactly, well, they were working on exactly the same thing, except they had the whole of Microsoft behind them. Anyways, funny story. They, as we started building, we had a couple of, I had a couple other team members, and we actually didn't end up raising any money because all of us were really passionate about what we were building. We kept bouncing from hackathon to hackathon, and in a way, we didn't raise money, but we raised awareness for what we were building. Eventually got noticed by Google, and we had some support from Google, who connected us to a team outside the country, and we collaborated. So I guess bottom line was there is a path to a product that does not involve any fundraising, because let's say our team was motivated enough to keep going, this potentially could have been something that would have gone on to become a project that essentially gets acquired by Google X, as it was at the time. I think it's just called X now. Apart from that, with companies after that, we've had good luck, like Hannah was mentioning, we've had good luck raising from competitions. It's free money. It comes with no strings attached, ideally no equity. That's a great place to be as a student founder. It's also an easy place to be because you don't have to figure out all the legalese around taking money. And to add to all of that, if you're building for a consumer, it's always a great idea if you have a large enough customer base to raise from your consumers. There are a lot of platforms which do allow you to do that. And we worked with one of them for my previous company. And there's pluses and minuses to it. And I think the biggest plus is before raising any pre-seed money, it's a great way to show your investors that, hey, there are 50 people who believe in my product enough that they've invested their own money into it. And that's always a great lead into a conversation.
Definitely. I agree with proving demand as early as you can being incredibly valuable. Isabella, what's your fundraising experience been like?
Yeah, so we actually haven't fundraised for Girls Who VC specifically, but have had lots of experience speaking to especially female founders that are currently fundraising. And I'd say mostly what everyone has said, whether that be bootstrapping, crowdfunding, or going to pitch competitions, I think it's really hard to raise a round if you're staying in school, which is a concern that I know a lot of investors have, is that they want you to go full time, which obviously a lot of students don't want to do. So typically the founders that I know will kind of follow that path, go through angel investors or other things until they graduate college and then be able to take on a real round.
Fantastic. And Tara, from your perspective, what really is one of the best funding routes for a student founder to take?
I think, what everyone said before, free money, unless you're doing something that's capital intensive and deep tech or health and life science. there are so many pitch competitions in Boston. And one of the things, like in my our accelerator program that we work on, is really the storytelling piece. So it's actually you're sort of killing two birds with one stone. The opportunity to go tell your story over and over again and see and hear from people, like how they respond, what do they find interesting, what questions do they have, what do they think needs to be worked on, is the market opportunity big enough? Those are all things that help you not only pressure test your idea or your venture, but also helps you get that story tighter and more focused. We do like quick pitch sessions with our teams. And, the idea at first was just to help them with their narrative. And what we found over time was it was an opportunity for experts to poke holes in their venture. So by the time like 3 or 4 months in, they had a much tighter story, a much stronger business model, a go-to-market strategy, a team. Like they could answer all the sort of hardball, softballs that were thrown at them and be able to respond to it, investors in a meaningful way. And I think pitch competitions are a great starting point, but anyone in your network that you can pitch to is also super valuable. And getting to that point where you feel comfortable with your story and it's airtight is helpful. The second piece is don't fundraise too soon. I mean, we live in Boston. We have access to a lot of capital, even though the macroeconomic environment right now is challenged. I see a lot of people who start a venture and they're like, I want to go out and fundraise. Like we hear that a lot. All I'd say is don't fundraise too soon. Make sure you build a viable venture, and taking money too soon, especially venture, puts you on a specific trajectory that a lot of times people aren't ready for. You have to move fast and furious. You're expected to meet milestones, very aggressive milestones, very quickly. And not every founder is built or ready to do that. There's a lot of value in building slowly, getting feedback from customers, and taking your time at the beginning to build a really strong, viable venture, but also build yourself as a leader. So if you take money, outside money, especially venture money, very soon, there's an expectation that you're going to start delivering on that money. And you want to just be ready for it as the leader of your organization. So give yourself time to grow into that role and prove that you're the right person to be leading the company. The last thing you want is to be pushed out after a number of years. So think about it carefully. Getting money up front is sometimes not a blessing. It could be a crutch in terms of how you build your company and the direction that it goes in.
Thank you. That was really sage. And ultimately, giving up equity is a huge responsibility, and taking money can be, and it is something much bigger than it starts out with. So I do want to pivot a little bit and ask the student founders, have you ever had to pivot your business, product, or service? And specifically, have you ever had to pivot it after releasing it to the market and beginning to share it with the world? What was that like?
Yeah, I can take this one. So for Girls Who VC last year, we started an ambassador program where the plan was to have students at different schools across the country start by leading events to kind of build the presence across different college campuses. And we started in the spring. It was about like spring break time, so March, doing that. And I think the time just didn't work. It was too late into the semester. People were kind of transitioning over to finals to be able to do events. Typically the beginning of the year, like September, October, right where we are now, are typically best event times. And so it wasn't a really good time to do it. We had people at different college campuses. And so everyone was trying to put on these events, but people were slow in responding to emails, couldn't get the spaces and all of those things. So had to decide to kind of put a pause in that program and come back to it now in the fall where we are. And so I think that was hard, especially since I had a lot of girls that spent so much time planning events and they wanted to put them together, but also we didn't want them to put so much time into it and then have only a couple of people actually come to the events. And so I think that was really hard in a time where we had to pivot and instead figured out other ways that they could really put their passions into different projects. So started working on planning ways to really get into college campuses, and that's something that now we're being able to implement. So finding different ways to kind of adjust, and maybe the product's good but the timing's bad, and kind of seeing, okay, when would a better time be and how can we prepare ourselves then to launch in a better way.
Fantastic. Thank you for the example. Hannah, Rishab, anything to add? Perfect. All right. I have one more question, and then I would love to open it up to any questions from the audience. My final question is, what is the best part of being a student founder, and what is the most challenging part? Would love to hear. Oh, Rishab, do you want to kick us off? I think you might be muted.
Yes, I was muted. Thank you. So I think the best part about being a student founder is everybody's more than happy to help you. Being a student is a great plus in this situation because you can reach out to anybody under the sun and say, hey, I'm a student. This is what I'm building. Would like some advice. Now you can start with advice, make them an advisor, make them a potentially pitch them your company as an angel, as an investor. It can go any number of directions. And like, I forget who mentioned this, but this is also the biggest negative because you, at the end of the day, you are a student. You can't go full-time on your startup, no matter how much you try, unless, you know, you drop out. But then you're not a student. So it's a double-edged sword. You get all the advice you need. You have all the resources, but at the same time, you have to understand, or people understand, that there are limitations associated with you being a student. Along with that, I think the great part about being a student is you have a massive peer group. Typically, we solve problems that we see, which means people around us probably also see the similar problems, if not the same. And well, with putting aside the fact that it could turn into an echo chamber, you still have a lot of people to speak to validate your idea, to validate your assumptions. It's kind of like customer discovery on steroids, if you will.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said. I think also the nice thing about being a student is that you can work on a lot of different projects and not commit to something as a full-time job because you are a student. And also being able to speak with other students and build that community has been something that's really nice. I've gotten close with a lot of students from different college campuses across the US just because of Girls Who VC, and that's been something that's been super exciting for me. A negative is definitely having to choose between classes, homeworks, and then building whatever you're building. A lot of times choosing between whether it makes more sense to take a meeting with someone or spend more time on your homework or studying for a test, and kind of juggling all of that can be very overwhelming and time consuming. But at the end of the day, I still think it's worth it working on a side project.
I can totally second that. I would actually start with negative since Isabella ended it with negative. I would also say the same thing. It's balancing between classes and trying to also focus on your startup at the same time. It's really hard to juggle 100 different things at the same time. But I would say the positive things to that is that when you are a student, it's kind of like a golden card. People are out there and they're willing to help student founders because they know that you have a lot more freedom to fail and that you are in the learning mindset. Therefore, you can pick up things faster and you can fail faster and therefore build a better product. So I would say the timing being a startup founder is probably the blessing because you're still figuring things out. And if something failed, you just get right back up a lot easier than someone who's actually doing it like full time and doesn't really have that much time to fail, or at least they're time pressed to do so.
Thank you. And Tara, from your perspective, what might some of the advantages or disadvantages be?
I think building the advantage is the opportunities that you're afforded to build a startup, especially in Boston. Most of the schools have entrepreneurship centers, is a great way just to build that innovation muscle. I think irrespective of whether you're going to work on a startup or you're going to go work at a large corporate or you're going to join a startup or another company, I think building that mindset is really valuable. And as the other speaker said, I think being a student is your golden ticket. So I work with alumni, and people always ask me to make introductions, and I'm like, you could just reach out to them directly. They'll most likely respond, especially if you're a student. So take advantage of that opportunity now while you have it, because it disappears quickly. Some of the disadvantages, I think, yes, it's a work-life balance piece, and like trying to balance school and other activities and having a life and enjoying your time as a student is fraught with challenges when you're also trying to build a company and you have other people that you're trying to please around you. But again, it's a great experience, a learning opportunity to build a different kind of mindset. And I feel like the world has shifted in that sense. It doesn't matter if you're going to become a doctor, lawyer, engineer, having an innovation mindset, I think, is going to be a great skill to have and a lifelong learning opportunity.
Love that. Thank you. All right. We will open up the floor for questions, both virtually as well as here in Boston.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Maria, and I have a question with your expertise from your perspective. What are some advantages and disadvantages for building startups with a team versus solo as a student? Do you have any suggestions for that?
I think it's a lot easier with other people.
Thank you for answering my question. That was literally it. I mean, if you're solo, it's so hard. Yeah, that was totally the answer.
Yeah. I think you can get a lot farther quicker when you have a really great team in place. And I think what's important is that you have a shared vision and a complementary skill set. So that way you all have something really unique and important to add, but ultimately you're heading in the right direction, or perhaps the same direction. Yeah. Saw another question over here. Thanks.
So I know that running a venture requires a lot of time and effort, and there are other things that take up your time, like relationships or families, etc. And so I was wondering, what do you guys do to balance everything, and how do you guys maximize your work-life balance?
Time management. I don't know what to say. It's a tough balance, but you kind of have to make time for everything. And I think the way I did it was there was a self-care bucket, and everything that wasn't work or school fit into the self-care bucket. And I had time aside for that. Please add.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, adding on to that, I think that when you're a student and building something, it's impossible to do everything. So kind of figuring out what your priorities are and being okay with that. And maybe you're not spending as much time on one thing as you really hope to in an ideal world, but saying that that's okay because there are other things that you're prioritizing instead, and sticking to a calendar, putting everything in there, making sure that you can actually fit everything in your day and not go crazy. And that's usually what I like to do.
I would say my experience is a little bit different than other student founders just because at Northeastern we have the co-op program, which allows you to pretty much work on whatever you want and you get paid doing so. And I had the opportunity to do that working on Boxy for a whole entire year. So I truly got to experience what it felt like to be a true full-time founder. So I didn't really go through this experience up until this summer when I had to take 3 classes, balancing between like capstones and just Boxy and traveling in general. And that's when it hit me. And I'm like, oh my God, it's actually really hard to be a student founder. But I would say something that I do to kind of manage everything is to put all of the things that you have to do on a calendar and really prioritize, like Isabella mentioned earlier too. It's really important to know what you want to get done that day. And if it's just like little things that you don't really, like you probably shouldn't do, you just don't do it. I think quality is better than quantity, I would say.
Great. Thank you. Tara, anything to add?
I would just say, and I'm horrible at doing this, and I've been trying to do, like, and I'm not founding a company, but I think scheduling your time, even for fun, and putting it in the calendar and blocking it off is super helpful. I also think, like, creating a support system around yourself, people you can go to and lean on, having people that you can talk through those challenging times is super important, because otherwise you just sit with that stress. And it just stays with you and it kind of hangs over you while you're doing anything and everything. So, just make sure you have some sort of mental health outlet that you can do, but also people that you can lean on and get support from.
Great. Thank you. I think we have a question over there.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I want to circle back to the earlier team building topic. I wonder, how do you find like-minded people who share the same vision as you to join your team?
Great. Thank you. Who wants to take that first?
I can kick us off.
Great.
So I think, like I mentioned earlier, what really worked for me was hackathons. It was the quickest way to find, especially if you're a builder. If you're a builder and you know what you want to build, you go to a hackathon, you find people who want to build the same thing as you, and you kind of just get started. It's the quickest way to get out there, build an MVP, because the goal of the hackathon is you build an MVP. Now, again, this is not polished enough that you can take it anywhere and say, hey, I built an MVP, but it's a step in the right direction. You know everyone's working style, you know how they work under stress, and you know how to collaborate. Aside from that, there are a lot of organizations in Boston, including Startup Boston, which does co-founder matching at different points of time throughout the year. There's YC has a co-founder matching as well. Multiple events for founders. It's I like to think of it as a sort of dating process. You're kind of entering into you are entering into a long-term relationship with this other individual who you're going to found this company with. So it's good to take your time and sort of try and figure out how well you do or you do not work together.
Definitely.
I think the nice thing about being a student is that you're surrounded by probably thousands of other like-minded people around you, that one of them at least has to have a similar interest and want to help you. So if you're like sharing with people what you're doing, then one person will probably reach out. That actually happened with my friend Olivia, who's right there. But when I was building Girls Who VC, she reached out to me, said it was something interesting, and now we've been working together. So I think there'll definitely be someone, I think someone mentioned earlier, not wanting to like talk about something that you're building, but if you share with people, then people will reach out to you if they're also interested in it, and it'll just grow and be better.
Definitely.
I think it really depends on what you're trying to build. Are you looking for a co-founder or are you just looking for contractors? It really depends. I would say going into the selecting process or trying to find people to be on your team, you have to understand that, do you want this person for a long term or just for short term? If it is for short term, then try to hire someone who would actually get things done. So you should prioritize, I guess, work over passion. However, if you're looking for someone who's going to stick with you for a really, really long time, like a co-founder, for example, then look for someone who is a fast learner and who has a lot of passion into what you're doing.
Excellent. Thank you. Tara, do you have anything to add?
Well, I've just seen, and specifically relating to co-founders, some great co-founder relationships and some that have imploded. And a co-founding team that I recently spoke to said one of the ways they've navigated, and they've been together for 5 years now, is that they did an agreement like on day one on how they would work together with each other, and sort of rules. What happens if one leaves? What would happen with the company? And they kind of have this like document that they both agreed on, they both signed off on it. And so it helps them navigate and deal with different issues and even like challenging problems or personality issues with each other. They have tactics that they use to sort of work through it before it becomes a really big issue.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I think we have another question back there.
Yes, I wanted to ask, how often do you guys collaborate? Like when you guys were in school, if you are still in school, how often would you collaborate with like some of the clubs or committees on campus? It feels like just like any of the clubs in general that associate with what you guys do for your business.
Great question.
I can take this one first. For Girls Who VC, since we're building a community and really trying to help people and provide resources, honestly, I'm doing that like every single day. Speaking to people not only at Harvard in my case, but also at different schools everywhere. So I'd say that's a really integral part for me, but not necessarily applicable for other people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Hannah, do you have anything to add?
I would say just reach out to them and see if they're interested in like partnering with you. And if they don't reply to your email, send another follow-up. And if they don't, do it again and again. And then maybe they're not the right one for you if they like stop responding after like 5 emails. But really try to like put yourself out there and don't even like take things like too personal. It's not like they don't want to talk to you. It's just like maybe your email gets like lost in their inbox. Just keep on reaching out. You'll eventually find people that want to collaborate and work with you.
Thank you. Rishab, do you have anything to add?
So can I ask for a clarification? I was curious. So when you say work with student organizations, in what way?
Like for example, for you, like it'll just be like mainly promotion, as in like you want like to have like during a club meeting, you want to talk about your business or your company to see if anybody's interested in it, from a consumer or an employee example, for either way, for like either BSU or computer science club or like SLI, stuff like that. Basically, that's what I'm wondering. Like same way how you go to hackathons, like did you ever go to your like computer science club and ever like you ever do like a elevator pitch or you do like your own speech during a club meeting?
Interesting. Well, no, I did not. But I was also, I was a computer science student, so I was part of that club. So it was slightly different for me. But I think following up or following up and asking again, exactly what Hannah said. I think that's the way to go. But I would also say that it's an interesting approach going to a student organization and looking for either interest or feedback on your pitch. It's definitely a great way to get it in front of people. But then again, it's a hard one, because the way I think of it is when I'm in these meetings, especially if I'm part of like the organizing club for something, I'm in that meeting looking for or I'm in that meeting for a reason. We're organizing something the next week, and we want to get updates on, where everything is. Are we set up to host the event that we're planning or whatever? This sort of changes the flow of events in a meeting. So I'm not sure if it's the best place to request that kind of feedback, but that's just my personal opinion. Somebody else, feel free to jump in. Yeah.
Tara, what would you say on collaborating with, different university clubs or potential partners?
Yeah, I would find like events where there's a built-in opportunity to do that kind of networking. So, pitch events, as Hannah mentioned before, or where there's a cross-university mixer in Boston that's happening at Tufts. I'll have to find the date and share that with the organizers. But those are great venues to go and connect with people who are either founding a startup or interested in joining one. And so I think going to events like that, and there's so many, like really, there's probably one every single night in Boston that you can go to that's run by like the Capital Network or Mass Challenge or any one of the accelerators, where they're trying to meet with potential founders early in their journey. So just try to get plugged into that ecosystem and take advantage of all the opportunities here. We're really, really lucky to have so many that are accessible, especially for students.
Fantastic. Yeah, please.
So actually, when I started Girls Who VC, I started by messaging all of the like women in computer science, women in business, women in entrepreneurship clubs at different schools across the country. And I found that a lot of them would put us in their mailing list and kind of send that out to people saying, if you're interested, check this out. But usually what I found the most helpful was going on LinkedIn and typing in those clubs and then finding people that you think had some sort of interest or they were working on something similar or you saw some sort of overlap, and then reaching out to them directly was usually a better way to get responses. So that's something I recommend, but I definitely think that the mailing list can help too if you're looking for either like original users or people to kind of build the team up or looking for specific skill set. I think there are definitely students that, for example, if you have more of a CS background, are looking to build an app to kind of build their portfolio themselves. So I think there are definitely people out there, and mailing lists are a good way to get there as well.
Definitely. Thank you. Good luck. We're all cheering you on. I do want to wrap up the session with one kind of final question for everyone here, which is, what is the best resource you would suggest for a potential or aspiring student founder? Perhaps it's a mailing list, perhaps it's an organization like the Capital Network, perhaps it's even a person. What would you suggest as really being one concrete resource that a student founder could take with them from today? Tara, would you like to go first?
Wow, that's a hard one. Because I think, again, we're in a resource-rich ecosystem. I think finding someone who believes in what you're doing, they may be like an early mentor or champion for you. They may not be able to go on that journey with you long term, but to just give you some guidance and navigation just to get you started is super helpful. It could be a teacher, it could be a friend who's like done something like this before, or somebody at one of these accelerator programs. But sometimes finding somebody to go on that journey with you, and then plugging into a program, I think early on, either at your school or in the ecosystem, is super helpful.
That's great. Thank you. Isabella?
I know I just touched on LinkedIn, but I would say that LinkedIn is a huge way to connect with people. I love just messaging people that I find really interesting on LinkedIn. And if you say that you're a student, like people said, usually they'll respond to you and get on a call. And I've met a lot of amazing mentors through that, and people that now I consider very close friends of mine as well, that have been always there for me throughout the process and are people that are really supportive. So definitely like making a list of dream people that you find reaching out to. If you reach out to like Tim Cook, he probably won't respond, but like reaching out to people that are kind of more attainable and doing that. And I've always find that really helpful.
Fantastic. Hannah?
I would say really know who should be your mentor and really cherish that relationship and build it from the start. Try to find someone who like believe in your vision, and also you as a person. I think that's a lot more important than your vision, because your vision might change, but you as a person might not that much. If you have certain, like founder characteristics that hasn't really been shown in your startup because it's so new, then you should like try to find someone who has already been there and done similar things that you're trying to achieve, and like really stay close to them and be vulnerable to them when the time's hard, so that way they know what's best to help you. And I would say don't reach out to too many potential mentors, just because like you might get lost in the relationship. It's a lot to manage having a relationship with a mentor that you like chat with, for example, like like weekly or even like bi-weekly. So pick like a good one and stick to it and really cherish that relationship. It's going to take you far.
That's great. Thank you. And Rashab, do you want to bring us home?
And we've got about
Um,
30 seconds.
Great.
I think I'll pass. Let's see if we can get one more question in.
Yeah,
Or
Tara.
not.
Yeah, I just wanted to lean in and just say, go to your schools first, because they invest so much money in finding resources and people and experts, and even sometimes small grants to support you. And, I'm always amazed by the number of students who don't find the iLab until after they graduate. And they're like, oh my gosh, I wish I took advantage of all the programming and people that were here. So look to your universities, because I think most of them in Boston are investing heavily in entrepreneurship and innovation. So a lot of what you need and even finding those mentors and experts are right there in your backyard.
It's true. Thank you. And on that note, thank you all so much for contributing to a fabulous panel. Appreciate it. And we'll give you all a round of applause.